Okay, let's see if we can work on our objects here. So what I'm going to do, I've already created, you can do this as well. I just put a sphere down in a platonic. So sphere, platonic. I think I scaled the sphere down a little bit and I just added normals here to the platonic, just so we could have additional objects. And what we'll do is go into here and let's just label this. So I'm putting a null down and I'm going to call this points out. Oh, sorry, that shouldn't be in our that should be actually in the multi-scatter. So I just copied that. Now I'm going into multi-scatter and there, points out right there. And then null here, I'm going to call that geo out. And then we'll put a switch. Just like that. So we'll let the user choose whether they want points or geo coming out of here. We'll put a null and we will call this out. So we'll take our object merge here and we'll add an object parameter here. So I'm just going to right click, go all the way down to type properties. Let's collapse these guys here. Grab a folder. We'll call that geo. Hit accept. Actually hit apply first and then say okay. Yeah. We know that. Go inside. And then we're just going to drag number of objects right into geo here. Now select here in our channels and just take a quick look. Well, let's click apply first, hit OK again. Oh, and I can see that we have here for object and group, those are 0, so delete that, that should be empty. And go to group, just like that. Hit apply. Now let's see what we've got here, object path 0, for merge 1. Hit OK. Hit apply again, and I think that makes the error go away. So I'm going to click accept. Now if we go to geo here, now I can actually grab my test object, and that goes in here. So I'm going to grab two other objects. I'm just going to simply click plus and plus. That gives us 3 objects coming in. And let's grab for the second one a sphere. And for the third object, let's grab the platonic here. And these should all be stacked on top of each other. If I scale the sphere up a little bit here, you'll see that the sphere is stacked. Everything's stacked together. So what we would like to do is be able to randomize which one of these gets put onto which point. And it's not too hard for us to do that. So we'll dive back into the multi-scatter asset here. I think there were a couple things that got changed, so let's just delete these so it's back to what you should be seeing, just like that. So what we can do is make an attribute that gets passed up here and essentially split these into groups and delete the ones we don't want to be copied. So we can do this simply by selecting our geometry object here, and this should be off, I think, in yours. So I'm going to enable create primitive groups. Now, if I middle click here, you'll see now we have these groups with an underscore 0, 1, and 2 for each one of the incoming pieces of geometry. So I'm just going to change this here, and I'm just going to call that input. And now we have input 0, input 1, input 2 as groups. So what if we could do this? What if I could just delete? I'm just going to grab one of these groups here and delete the non-selected, the ones we don't want. What if we could just programmatically change this number? Well, we can. Let's go back to 0 here. And what we can do is do a little bit of a thing called a stamp operation. So let's make an attribute coming into our copy called input. So I'm making an attribute create. wiring that right into here. I'm just going to label that input. I'll dive in a little closer so you can see. So that's going to be called input. That needs to be an integer. And let's find out how many objects are actually coming in here. So we know 3 are coming in. So I'm going to copy this parameter. And I'm simply going to paste it right here. We'll keep this right where that is. And we'll start by typing a random expression. So random attribute, PTNUM for point number, times that channel. So we have a value between 0 and 1. And then this is 3. That's going to give us a random value for every point between 0 and 3. Now that needs to be 0, 1, or 2. So what we want is the lowest integer that it can find here. For that, we simply just put a floor expression right in front of all this, and then make sure we close that, and then just press enter. So if I look at the spreadsheet here, and I go and find my input, we should see that our values should say either 0, 1, or 2. And I can just look at the maximum value here or the minimum, and that confirms that. Going into our copy SOP, we simply turn on stamp inputs, and we have to tell it the name of the attribute we want to stamp. And that is going to be our attribute called input, which is the one we created right here. The final piece of this puzzle is to tell this number here to use the value that's being passed around here. So there's a little bit of this special stamping expression which is done to pass stuff upward into the network. And that's what we're doing here. And there's not a lot of cases where you're using stamping. This is kind of one of the big cases though. So what we'll do is this. Right now it thinks that this is a string and we want to put an expression in here. It's not going to evaluate that expression unless we put it in backticks like that. So we'll create a backtick and we will write the word stamp. Parenthesis. Now it wants to know where is this stamp that we want to grab, and that's going to be coming from our copy. So I'm just going to quote // copy 1, another quote, and then a comma. What is the name of the variable we're looking for? And that's called input, in quotes. And then if I can't find that, what should I do? You should give me a value of 0. Close that. And then another backtick. And there we go. So let's go here. And I'm just going to go up a little bit. Look at my sphere. I'm just going to dial that down. And what we're doing is just confirming that we don't have stuff that's just overlapping each other. So I'm going to do the same thing with a platonic. We'll just dial the radius down. And I can see that each point is getting a unique piece of geometry. So going back into here, let's go into our instance property, and I want to check that everything's actually working the way it should, which it is. So I do notice one thing, which is that we have on our test object, we have colors, but we're kind of wiping the colors away here. And I believe that's because the colors are primitive and not point attributes that are coming in. So it's kind of replacing one with the other. Just out of curiosity, let's see what happens if I replace this with a point color here for all these. Oh, in fact, I know exactly why that's happening. So let's go back to point, and I can tell you. I don't know if we'll fix this right now. I'm just kind of pointing it out because I saw it. I believe that's because in our asset here, we are choosing for our attributes to set rather than multiply. So if I wanted to do this, I could say @cd and then multiply cd, but I'm not sure that'll work because the attributes are actually different. Yeah. So currently we're just overwriting whatever's there, which is fine for now. You can obviously change this to do whatever you want. So let's save this and then continue.